Hello and welcome everyone. Today we have Richard, who is Linda Joyce's husband, who I interviewed yesterday. And Richard is going to take us through his perspective and put the puzzle together, the pieces for the puzzle, and also God. Now, Richard, how are you and where do we begin?
Well, actually, I would like to reiterate about God's plan for us. God has a plan for everybody, you, myself, everybody in this world. And I look upon it as a puzzle. And when you want to start a puzzle, you always get the perimeter of the puzzle. And then God gives you a choice. You have the choice of doing what he suggests or going your own path. And as we get direction from God, he tries to lead us down a particular path. But again, I said we have free choice. Many times I thought I was going to do certain things, but God had other plans. I'm going to give you some scenarios of how God talked to me as a child. When I was about 6 years old, my neighbor said to me, he wanted to go fishing, but he didn't want to go alone. He wanted me to come with him. And in a voice in my head, I heard God say, "No, don't go. Where he's going is very dangerous." And not too long after that, I heard sirens and all kinds of things. He apparently fell into the river and drowned. And so God protected me at that point. Another time in my life, say I was about 13 years old, I was walking back home, and a voice to me, "You're going to marry a girl named Linda." And I said, "I don't know any Lindas." And I wasn't even thinking of marriage at 13, didn't even know what marriage was. So, and as you know, you introduced me as Linda's husband. So I did marry a girl named Linda. Another time, God said to me, "You're never going to have to worry about your retirement." And at 13, what do you know about retirement? Didn't even have a job. Didn't know what the word retirement meant. So at different times, God talks to you and he tries to direct you. Another thing that was very instrumental in my life was certain people. My wife was a great influence on me. God was even a bigger influence. And then one of my college professors, one of them said to me that you never look at what the world is presenting to you in books. If you look at when the books are trying to teach you something, look at the publishing date. And they're always like 4 or 5 years later, So he taught me some great lessons of how to look at what's happening today and listen to your inner self when you're being talked to. I had an encounter with an angel at one time too. There's a young boy in a hot summer, didn't have a car, but had a bicycle. And there was a quarry not too far from us. And they had put huge boulders and telephone poles and things to keep cars and people from going into that quarry because it was a clay quarry. And when you have water and clay, it gets very slippery, right? Mm-hmm. So I did a foolish thing. I got in there with my bicycle and I jumped into the water. And all of a sudden, I felt this sharp pain in the bottom of my foot. And the water around me started to turn red. And I pulled my foot out, and there's this corner cut in the bottom of my foot. Now, there was no way a car could get into that and move those boulders. I couldn't get up the side of the cliff because I kept falling back down because of the slipperiness of the clay. And all of a sudden, this hand came down. Here, grab hold of my hand and I'll pull you out. And there's a man, he pulled me out. And yet he's got a car. How did he get the car into that quarry? Mm. I had a towel with me. He wrapped the towel around my foot. He drove me to the local hospital. I go into the hospital, they stitch me up. And I said to the nurses, "Where is the gentleman that brought me to the hospital? I want to thank him." And they said, "There was no man that brought you. You rode here on your bicycle." It wasn't possible. And never could find who that was. But the stones had moved, the telephone poles had moved, and when I went back there at a later date, they were all back in place again. So God has been a big influence in my life and in my direction. I can tell you all kinds of different stories that how he has really directed me. I'm gonna. I don't want to go too far forward yet. I want to do one more. I was working for a company, and they wanted me to develop what they called a clean room. The company was sizing ball bearings for a particular product, and they had to be free of any dust, dirt, oil, or whatever. Now, I'd never had a background in there. My background is in mechanical design engineering, basically. But a clean room is not a mechanical design item. And so I said, well, Lord, how am I going to learn how to do this? That's what they hired me for, thinking I could do this. And he started telling me, well, who has the best lab around? The United States Navy has a standards lab. So I wrote to them and asked them if I could come and look at their lab and see how they did it. So God's given me other gifts to see things and remember them how they were. I went in there, I had to sign all these kinds of things, and I looked at everything they did. And I said, wow, I could do better than this. And this is the Navy Standards Lab. At the time, this is going back quite a few years, the standards for them was a double room, clean room, and you had to wear all these different kinds of clothes and all this stuff. I designed a 4-level lab this was Honeywell Radiation Center, which is no longer in business. And God led me how to do everything, the step by step. To me, that was an amazing thing. Now, the other interesting thing was they hired another gentleman to work with me, and he was supposedly an expert in how to build a clean room lab. And he used to come to me and say, I really don't know how to do this. You have to help me. Don't let him know that I don't know what I'm doing. Oh, I still in an awkward position to put me in. I was going to rely on him. But we were successful, pulled it off. Another time that I can remember that God gave me this gift to look at certain things. I don't know if you know what a spectrometer is.
I'm not sure. No.
I was working for this company, and they wanted no. What a spectrometer does, it breaks down the items that are in a particular thing, and you want to know what's inside.
Right.
And they wanted to invent this, what they called a portable spectrometer, to take it out in the field and do testing in the field. It took 8 men to lift up this huge table with this spectrometer on it. And so they said, can you help us reduce this and make it smaller so that we could really sell it? This was a prototype. And I looked at it and I said, oh, yeah, I can see where we can really change this so one person could carry it out into the field, maybe 2. And they said, you can? They said, well, the man that invented this is going to come into the office here and want to talk to you. He says, don't tell him you know how you can change it. Don't want to hurt his feelings. So I'm thinking I'm going to explain it to them before he gets there. I did not know that the man was standing behind me a few minutes later. And to make a long story short, they did redesign the whole thing and you can put it on a tabletop now. So that's another gift that God has given to me. I know that my wife has talked to you about the other things about my medical thing. I'd like to get into that later, but I'm going to tell you one more little story. She and I are both somewhat of an entrepreneur. She started her businesses. I tried to stop mine because in my heart, God always said, she was saying to me, you know, in a sense, like you wanted to be a barrister. You had that in your heart at the beginning. But God said, you know, you should own your own business in a sense, or at least I thought that was him. So we wanted to start a little business in our own property. And remind you, I have never built anything. And we needed money to build the store. And said to each other, well, where would we go to get the money for this? And God said to me, you're going to get it from the place you least expect it. And I said that to my wife. God just said, we're going to get it from a place we least expect it. And she says to me, well, where do you think that is? And we both at the same time said, the bank. Now, ironically, I didn't do a business plan or anything. We both got in the car, went to a bank, and they had, well, what are you here for? Well, we need some money to do this and that. And we did it all verbally. He said, give me a few minutes. He goes upstairs, comes back down, and he gives us a check. We went out of there. We were in shock. For days, I don't even believe we thought, oh my God, how did that happen? But God said, go to the bank, ask him for it. Because in one of the scriptures, he says, if you ask not, you won't get it, you know? Now, but God has timing for everything too, but it was for our time at that point to get it. So now we have this check. What do we do? How do we get started? God said, go and dig the perimeter where you want the building to be. And we did it by hand. We didn't have the money to go and get a machine to dig all the footing and the foundation. Okay, so we did that. And it just happened that my wife had a friend, her husband was in the foundation business. He came over and he put the foundation in for us. I just had to pay for it. That was the one thing. So I started to get the money, put together the lumber, you know, a sketch of what I wanted to build, what she wanted. Ended up building a 1.5-story building. And she said, I want a big picture window in the store. And the picture windows that are, how do you call it? They need to be double glazed with a gas in between so that they don't get cloudy. And I didn't have the money to buy that either. So I said, God, how am I going to do that? And he told me how to do that, how to make a window, double window. And I said, gee, it would be nice to have a sliding door to move stuff in and out of her store. So I designed one that was like the size of a garage door with this window. And that was over 50 years ago, and it's still working today. I didn't buy that. God just showed me how to design it and make it. I've been involved in many different types of businesses that I didn't belong in. Mm-hmm. One of them, I don't know if you know what the LEM was, the Lunar Excursion Module.
No, rings a bell, maybe.
That's a long time ago too. And I worked on that, and we were trying to get communication levels between when it took off and went to the moon. Mm-hmm. How are we going to communicate back and forth? I ended up working with RCA and MITA Corporation, which is MIT, really. And we developed a great communication system that did go into the LEM. God helped me with that. I was assigned a logistical engineer, and I'm a mechanical design engineer, which has nothing to do with communication. These are just the different things that God has put in my spirit, how to do and when to do it, how to do it. And not only that, even to apply for jobs at certain places. I'm trying to think of, without getting into the medical, but I think I probably should. You heard her explain how we were sitting in front of the TV.
Right.
And we were shocked when this little kid died. And what God does to me, I call it downloading, Nick, if you know what I mean. Mm-hmm. It's like downloading when you download on a computer. God does that to your brain sometimes. And sometimes it's overwhelming because he does it so quickly, a lot faster than the internet. Excuse me. And he just gave me the whole scope of what I should do, how I could stop that from happening. And the whole thing was simple to me, and how it all developed. From the time that you would check in to a hospital, he showed me how to do the administration part of logging you into a hospital as a patient, and how to get a wristband would have your picture on it with a barcode. Mm-hmm. And on that barcode, it had certain keys of prior medication. That's an important point I wanted to let you know. And then I also developed within the software, if a physician prescribes a particular drug, and a pharmacist or a physician tries to give you something different, it would create what they call a counterindication. In other words, if a warning would come up on the screen saying, you can't give this patient this drug. In certain cases, though, physicians are allowed to override a counterindication.
Mm-hmm.
So I provided a way for the physician to log in to that and say, I have to override this because he needs this. He has to explain why he needs that. Now you have a record. You have a paper trail of all the things that are happening. And this is all stored in this software. So the software just kept progressing to get better and better and better. And there are competition out there. And I said, to myself, Lord, why are you showing me this when there's other administrative softwares out there? Didn't make any sense.
Mm-hmm.
I said, you'll understand later. And so I found out who the competition was because every hospital was using their system. Of course, they're not using mine, but there's a lot of flaws. And these are multi-million-dollar software packages. I went to many hospitals after I had developed my software, and I showed them how it worked, and they all loved it. And they said, how much does it cost? And I said, well, you could buy it in stages and implement it along the way, but the whole system, if you wanted it all together, is about $1 million. They were paying 5, 10, 15, 20, $30 million for theirs. It was a mistake that I made by telling them how much it was going to cost, because they started telling other people, and then it got up to another level, which I will get into later. I had given presentations of my software to different places in other states now. I was invited to Florida, to Fort Lauderdale, to do a presentation to a group of doctors there. They were shocked at how inventive this is. Our software doesn't take it to that level. And again, when they asked me how much it was, they said, well, how come it's so cheap? Because they're used to paying all that money. There was a hospital in Worcester, Mass, which I went to, and there was a doctor there. He sat down with me and took me into his like a studio library where doctors could go in and reference. And he said, Richard, see all those books in that case over there? He says, we have to learn everything that's in there in order to use their software. He says, you know how many times we've gone in there and used that? He said, hardly at all. He said, but yours is so simple. I don't even think we need any books. I said, my manual how to use the software is on a PDF file. I said, it's only a few pages because it just talks you through everything. God simplified it so easy, Nicholas, that you could do it. And you have no medical background either.
Mm-hmm.
Another thing is that he said you're going to need a tool for the doctors to use to bedside this procedures.
Mm-hmm.
Because they didn't have the cell phones that we have today that you could, And I said, God, what am I going to do? He said, you're going to develop a tool. And I said, well, what am I going to call it? He said, you'll think of a good name. I called it Mobile Clip. Now, to give you an idea what Mobile Clip is, it's a handheld tablet type device. It does tons of things. This is 12 years before Steve Jobs brought out the iPad. That's how early God brought it out. From that, another spin-off was I developed other software. I would go back a little bit. I almost forgot one thing about the procedures, how the doctor could bring up everything.
Yeah.
The doctor could bring up the prescriptions, write them right on the Mobile Clip, sign it, and it would go right to a pharmacy. So there's another paper trail that documented it, where everything went. It blew my mind when I saw how ingenious the whole concept God gave me. And to me, it was so simple. And again, Linda explained about, I had no programming background at all in software. I wrote the software for this thing.
It's amazing. Wow.
And the thing was, she talked about the office, the little office I started with, because she explained how I went to the lawyer and told him about the software that God gave me the idea. And he said, you have to patent it right away because this is groundbreaking. He says, you got to get yourself an office so that you're going to have people coming to you that want to talk to you about it. And I couldn't find one anywhere. And as you know, she gave me the story. But the other part of it, that, I started with that little office. And all of a sudden, people started coming to want to work with me for free. God just directed them because I didn't have the money to pay that kind of money to pay people with the brains I didn't have. At least I thought that. And also, there was another office suite down the hall. This was an incubator development that a friend of mine had put up in a mall. And we had made little cubicles. So I had 5 people working for me full time, right into the evening. They didn't even go home for supper. They were so excited trying to develop all this. I looked over everybody's shoulder, watch what they're doing. I sort of taught myself how to write the software. And then the place that I had the little office that I first started with, he ended up moving out. He had this huge office suite. We had 7 rooms.
Mm-hmm.
So I took that over. I think I sent you a picture of me sitting at my desk. We could see the brick wall like you have right behind it.
I think I remember it. Yeah.
Yeah. It was a few years ago, but now I've learned really how to write software. I went not crazy with it. I don't want to use that word, but I started to experiment with all different types of things, which I'll explain. I had people coming into my office all the time. I had interviewed because of one of the software programs that I wrote by a local TV station. They came in, they said, we heard about what you were developing. I'll give you the names of the software and give you a briefing of what they were. One of them was called Aid First. Mm-hmm. It was a logistical software to aid first responders. If there was any kind of a disaster, the software would cum all the things that they might need to help them in a particular disaster. For instance, like say there was a small radiation leak somewhere. What do you need to contain that? Heavy equipment, sand, whatever you needed. They would give you where these things were, how quickly you could get them to help you address that. Another one, which I liked, is called Air Secure. And using the mobile clip, you could, this was made for the Homeland Security and the U.S. Marshals, and they do travel on airplanes. You don't know who they are, okay? And I had developed the software where you would type in a flight. And the airline, of course, you get into their access to their software too, of who's on the flight. And then you have a seating arrangement. They tell you who's sitting where and their name and everything. The marshal very discreetly can type in all this information, and it goes to his software and tells him the background of that person if he felt they were suspicious. We were also working with Homeland Security out of Logan Airport, which is in Boston. Mm-hmm. They had wired their whole facility wireless, and they wanted to use the mobile clip to help them with if any situation arose at the airport, how they could handle it using the Aid First and the mobile clip. And I don't know if I'm giving too much away.
No, that's okay.
And then, pardon?
No, that's okay. I love it. I'm
sorry. Okay. And another one was a lot valet. You know what RFID is? You get a little sticker when you get a new car, and you put that in there, and you type in all the information, and then you put the car on a parking lot. I have a great demonstration for how that works. And so now when you want to show a person a particular car, especially if you're a large dealership, you just have to type in that number. The vision of the parking lot comes up on your mobile clip and shows you where the car is, shows you where the keys are. Now, say the person buys that car. Now it has the GPS where that car is. You can send the person, well, you've got so many miles on your car, you should come on in for an oil change. These are the different ideas that God gave me, how to put all these things together. And you're going to find out why you don't see this today shortly. Another one that I did was on the medical side. I did one where we were talking about Flash Health, which is my medical software for your individual medical records. We put together an unbelievable software package that at that time, we had tested it with a 7-year-old and a 70-year-old to see how well they would go through it. How easy is it for you to put that information in there? And again, it was to save a life and also give you records that you could keep on a permanent basis and update it as you go for family or even pets. There are a lot of people that have pets. Their pets are like their family. And you go to the vet, you want to know, the vet would ask you, when was the last time you were here, or what did you do with him, or whatever. You can have all that information right on your flash drive. That's where I put the software. And the thing was that there are certain things that you don't want a first responder to see. So the software was developed that he can access key information to save your life. The local senator and I, we were able to get a law passed across the country where any first responder has to look on your person for the caduceus. I don't know if you know what that means. It's what the doctor symbol is, the wings and the snake around the thing.
Okay, yeah.
Or any identification. You remember how they have the bracelet? It had the 1-800 number. And if there was an emergency, you have to call the 1-800 number. All right. I didn't want that. I want them to have immediate access, but I don't want them to see everything that you want to store. So if you were to go to my website, there's a movie or 1-minute video that shows you how all that works and what they see. And what if the 800 number was busy because they got flooded in an emergency? You don't want to sit there and wait. The physicians say you have a golden hour to save somebody's life in a traumatic experience. With my device, it's right there. There's no golden hour. It's seconds. You plug that in. Every first responder has a laptop now. So we were able to get that law passed to assist them into saving lives. There is a pastor in Florida. He's had multiple heart palpitations leading to almost a heart attack. And because of my device on him, they were able to see what the procedure is, what drugs he was taking, what not to give him. And now he wears it around his neck. He says he doesn't go anywhere without it. Now, the reason why we're bringing this up at this point in time is, why isn't this out there in the public? And same thing for MobileClip. Why isn't it out there? Because it's a great product that would save many lives. And at the time, we got orders from a company called Windsor Medical. They ordered 50 of Flash Health, and they gave them away. We had an agreement. They bought them, but they gave them away. Oh, I want to sidetrack one thing. When you get your flash drive, because the government has this thing called HIPAA, which you can't transfer your information from one place to another unless you authorize that to a physician or anybody. It cost me a couple of $100,000 to get HIPAA certified. And you have to go through a long process. So we did that. So in regards to that, when you put your code into that, we tell the people, you better write it down and keep it in a secure place, because if you can't remember it, we can't help you. Because of HIPAA, you can't store anybody's password anywhere. Now, the thing is, but the first responder doesn't need a password to see your emergency information. So what comes up will be a series of pictures on the side screen, and you can click on the picture if you can identify the person or there's a name. And when that comes up, or even your pet, then they would see important information. And another unique thing in my product, now you're in England, and say you wanted to go to Spain, France, Germany, Italy, Portugal, and something happened to you in that country, if they plugged in that software, it changes the language to that country you're in. So there's a little bunch of flags at the top, so they would recognize the flag and hit it. And of course, have the English flag up there too.
So yeah, go on, please carry on. No.
Okay. So the reason we don't see my products out there is because Obama was in office when this started to come out. The insurance companies helped develop, along with some of the things that the Boston insurance companies and hospitals were doing. That's where they got the idea for Obamacare. It was developed from the Boston area hospitals. They did not want that. They don't want the people to have their information. And the hospitals don't want you sharing your information with another hospital, because what happens if you go to a different hospital? They don't make the money. They're losing money. So that sort of got squashed. The mobile clip, because the resolution on the mobile clip, you could make clinical decisions. And down the road, if you want, I can send you images of my first mobile clip, the screen, and also Steve Jobs. You can see them side by side. The resolution in mine, 12 years before him, was ridiculous. I had gone to a company in Texas that made a screen, has little tiny dots that you can't see. It's like a matrix, and the little dots connect to each other. So when you touch that, that's what activates those dots.
Mm-hmm.
So they developed for us. The dots were so close together, it was ridiculous. That's why the resolution was good. Of course, advances have been made where the screen resolutions are ridiculous. Even on your phones. Matter of fact, I can look at my website on my phone, and it's just as sharp as it is on the large screen that I have in my office here. Excuse me. I had given many presentations throughout the United States, and one of the other software things that I developed was, to me, this is funny. Washington, when I was going to Washington I was invited. They wanted to know if I could use the mobile clip to help them with the census. I said, "Oh, sure." So I went back and to my office, and I took the 2010 census form. I recreated it in a software, and the software was interactive with the people that would have to go out and do field interviews. In those days, what they used to do, it was all done on paper. They'd go back and they'd type or scan and then send it to a server. Then the server would send it to Washington. They'd gather all the information. The way I perceived the software to work was they take my mobile clip, go to the field, and not only would they go to the house, but if they wanted to say that you weren't in communication for quite a while, somebody could hit the button and the software would show exactly what house or wherever you were. If you're sitting in a car house, it would pinpoint where you are in case you were in trouble. There's some neighborhoods you go to that you didn't really want to go to, and some of the people who wanted to give the information weren't that friendly. Let me put it that way. So I developed the software, and the director of the Census Bureau actually came to Boston, got a hotel room, and asked if we could give him a demonstration. It was so funny because he's cradling it and he's going through this and he's typing in all the stuff. He's amazed. "Oh, this is great. I love this." And he said, "Can I take this back home?" I said, "No, this is my prototype. It's the only one I've got." He says, "You sure? This is my birthday. This would make a great birthday present." I said, "No, unfortunately, I need this to keep continually developing what I'm doing." And so I went back and he said to me, "We would like to place an order for your software." and your mobile clip. We'd like to get 3/4 of 750,000 of them and 250,000 for spares. That's 1 million pieces. That's an unbelievable order. And he said, for backup and everything. So we start the negotiations. Now I'm dealing with him in the beginning, and I still have the emails to prove this story. And he got me involved with a gentleman. I don't want to mention his name. And he was a high-level staffer. And so we started the negotiations. And he said, well, what is it going to cost us? I said, well, I sell these for $2,500, the mobile clip at that time. That's really not that expensive for a groundbreaking device. And he said, well, we can't pay that. I said, well, I will sell you that for $1,200. That's half the price. And he said, well, let me get back to you. So in the meantime, I said, I've never worked with the government. I don't know how this is going to work, and I would want deposits. So somebody had suggested that you go to a leasing company. I got involved with GE Leasing. And they said, oh, we'll take that contract. We'll work with you, get you the money, and we'll bill the government for it. So he comes back and he said, well, we're not going to pay $1,200. We'll pay $600. And I said to him, I can't even make it for $600. I said, this is ridiculous. I said, I'm going to make probably $200 profit on each one with packaging after. I said, I don't even know what that profit's going to bring me to. And he says, well, never mind. We'll use phones to call back and forth. Then they would start. They weren't the type of phones we have now, but much better phones. So that went by the wayside. And that really was heartbreaking in a sense. So now we come to the military. By the way, I made when I went to Washington, I made many presentations and showing them what they were hugging me when I went there. They were so excited to see this software working. And I developed military software to help all the branches of the military. It's just a matter of changing some different things and how the software is going to work. I'm speaking with generals and, the brass that's in Washington. That's where all the high-ranking ones are. And I'm sitting there and I think, I'm out of my league here. I don't know half the things they know. And yes, I was in the military. I was in the Army. And that's another story in itself. But I'm sitting there and I'm saying, these guys know so much more than me. I'm just going to sit and listen to what they're going around introducing themselves and telling me everything they know. And I'm sitting there and I'm just learning. By sitting there and not saying much, I learned what they were looking for, how to revamp what I had already presented. So what I did present to them, they loved it. And again, the military then was under control of Obama. So again, I got shut down. This happened more than once.
Wow.
But through all of this, I've learned how to, in different jobs, learn how to listen to God. What is he directing me to? And if I didn't do that, I don't know if I would even have the knowledge to do the things that I did. And I've always wanted to own my own business. So what did God do? He's provided me with multiple businesses on a very high level. And I feel my journey now is to try to relate to people how to listen from God when he talks to you. And they have to be aware that Satan can also talk to you because he comes to you as an angel of light. And he can give you ideas too. And you have to discern what is God's word for you and what Satan's trying to tell you. And again, God gives you that free choice. He's got the puzzle piece. If he gives you that idea and he wants to put it into the puzzle, it's your choice whether he puts it in there or not. And if you go a different road, he'll hold on to that piece. Eventually, he's going to try to bring you back. But it's the decisions you make in life that he's always going to try to direct you to where he wants you to go. It's happening to you. You are a great interviewer. You have a great way about you. And I feel that God's talking to you to do this just like he's talked to me. I've learned a lot by shutting my mouth and listening. I've done, I'll tell you one company. It was so funny. I was a general manager of this company, and it was in the flooring business. And you heard what happened with that, which I'll probably explain in greater detail. The company wanted me to be the general manager and train the new managers. Now, they always wanted me to be intimidating. And a lot of people say that I am. I don't feel that way. I feel that God's given me a good spirit.
Mm-hmm.
And I go into my office, and my boss says to me, "There's a bunch of guys in the auditorium that we want you to look at. We're thinking of hiring them. We feel they'd make good managers. Check them out, see what you think, review them, and whatever." My way of reviewing people, interviewing people, is different than everybody's. I just shut up and listen. Tell me about yourself and everything. And once people get rolling, they have a tendency to just tell you everything. Mm-hmm. And now it's my way of learning. Well, you're going to be able to do the job or not. So the group that was in the forefront, I said, "Oh, these are good guys. I'm going to explain to them how to handle people." Because when you're working in a position as a store manager, you're going to get disgruntled people. How do you handle disgruntled people? You ask them, "Well, what is the problem?" Let them explain to you what the problem is. Now you know how to address the problem. And this is where I always ask God, well, what do I say to these people? I mean, how do I handle, the problem? So I related stories to them on the way God told me how to help people overcome the problem, resolve the problem, or if it can't be resolved, say, okay, it's been really nice, and we just have to move on. I'll give you a couple examples. I had to hire this person was a school teacher, and he got laid off, and he needed a job. He's got 4 kids, had great personality. I felt he'd be a good asset to the company, so I hired him. But once he got onto the job, he didn't have the knowledge. He had teaching knowledge, but he didn't have product knowledge, and that's so important. And so the figures in that store were way off. I had to go down there and talk to him. And I said, "Lord, he's such a nice guy. I'm going to feel bad that I have to let him go." And God said, "I'm going to talk you through it." So I have my sit down with him, and I said, "You're a great person. You have great properties. You're this, that, and everything else." He said, "But there's an issue on you not being able to close the sale, help the person with the product, this, that, and everything else." And I said, "If you were in my position, what would you do?" And he sat there for a while, and there was silence. And he says, I guess I'd have to be let go." I said, "Yes." So what happened? I didn't have to fire him. He did it himself. It was one of the ways God taught me how to handle that situation. My daughter uses that now in her job. Another one was that the insight that people give you is so important, because I found out that God talks to everybody. It's not, they just don't recognize that it's God talking to them. And sometimes you just have to drag it out of them, So the best way to drag it out of them is shut up and listen and ask them the question, And you sort of do the same thing. You'll interject different questions. Mm-hmm. And what do you learn? You learn how the situation, is to be handled, I'm trying to think of, there's so many of them, Nicholas, that it's hard to think of them all without,
Yeah. But I have to say, you and your wife, Linda, are very good storytellers.
Well, it's you know what? There are different situations where, I don't know if she told you about the computer. I had problems with my computer, and I said, "Oh, it's not working. I've tried this and I tried that, and I could never get it to work." She said, "Well, what do you normally do when you can't get things to work?" I said, "Oh yeah, I asked God how to fix it." So I said, "Okay, Lord, how do I fix this?" And then, boom, the whole scenario on how to fix it comes up, and it's in your mind. And there's so many different variations of asking God, but the key in finding out is you have to, I hate to say it this way, but there's no other way to say it, is you have to become born again. Because being born again, you get the Holy Spirit to come into you and speak to you all the time in emergencies.
Mhm.
There's times when I've come into different emergencies, I didn't know what to do. And God had said to me, this is how you handle this. This is how you do it. This, I wish I could, recall them all of a sudden to bring them all up. They're, I don't want to have dead time here. But God is going to give you ideas and things when you least expect it. He's going to come to you when, even if there is downtime, silence time, or whatever, God will speak to you and tell you, okay, now do this, do that. Another time, I learned how to put that structure up for my wife at the store.
Right.
And another that came, I'm afraid of heights. I didn't know how to overcome that. And I've been in high places. I had to fly so many times, and you don't get that feeling. But a gentleman came to me and says, "Oh, I like the building you built. That's a great design. I have a customer that wants me to build him a house barn. Can you help me build it?" I don't know anything about that. It's just funny that we ended up building a house barn. We just changed the interior of the building. I even made the sliding door. And it's funny because that sliding door was the same thing you needed to put into a horse barn to bring the horses in and out.
Mm-hmm.
So it's funny how God gives you
Absolutely.
things.
We just have to listen and whatever happens, good or bad, well, usually good, of course, and what our instincts tell us to do, and we listen to them, it's God speaking to us.
Yeah.
And the more in tune and the more you listen to it, you find that, in my experience, of course, that it gets stronger and things go really well for us as well.
Well, we talked about synergy of music between the both of us. My brother and I were singing, and during the 50s, there were a lot of groups out there singing. Ours was similar to the Everly Brothers and the Beatles. We used to sing all their songs. And we were approached by Capitol Records, which was owned by Cape Records, which was owned by Capitol Records. Mm-hmm. And they said, "Oh, you guys are great. We're going to, develop this, but we're going to teach you how to breathe to sing even better." So they paid for us to go to Berklee College of Music. Mm-hmm. It didn't cost us a dime. They cut records. We were on TV, we were on radio, and we thought, "Oh my God, this is going to be a great career for us." Not the road I was thinking we were going to go down, but it was for a time. And I'm going to tell you how Satan tried to bait us. I had not met my wife yet. I didn't know anybody named Linda still, but there were many groups that we used to sing in clubs in the local area, all New England area. And a lot of famous groups came in, and we were like the opening act. And of course, after the shows, you get together and relax and everything. And I never thought myself as being smart or handsome or whatever. And we all have our own opinions of each other. But the women in these groups always trying to come on to me. And I could have, I won't go into it, but I just kept myself away from it. I just felt uneasy about it. God just put in my spirit, don't go with them. Don't do this. Don't do that. And so God was protecting me way back then. Didn't realize it. I do now, because Absolutely. I know the perils of being in the music business, as you know, too. It's Absolutely. Deep state.
Very deep state. Very. Yeah. I'm glad I didn't. I just have a passion for singing, but everything else with the business, the people, the mentality, the everything was just not sitting right for me, but we have to go through things in life sometimes just to learn, to learn what they're about.
It's the puzzle, Nicholas.
Absolutely. It's the puzzle.
Yeah. And as you make the decisions God wants you to make, he puts a piece of that puzzle in there. And I know my puzzle and yours is not completed yet because we're not finished.
Mhm.
My goal is in my heart at this point in my life, and I've been doing it, is mentoring people, trying to teach them how to listen to God's voice and what's in their heart. And again, I ask the questions and I listen. And like I said, you do the same thing. You ask. That's why you're a great interviewer, and it's how God's taken you down that path. And I have also, God's given me the gift to see a lot of different things that are so complicated and make them much simpler. Because God's not a complicated God. He keeps things simple too. It's us that complicates things. You know, we screw it up. You know, and that was part of Satan's plan. He doesn't want to make things easy for anybody.
Yeah, of
Yet
course.
God says, no, my way's easy.
But listen,
know-
Richard, it's been lovely having you on.
Okay. You know, it's been a pleasure to talk to you. And I never thought I would be doing anything like this. But God's got his hand on you. He's going to bless you. He's blessed us, you know, with many, many things. You don't look at the blessings at the time. You'll see them later, Nicholas. So let me just
Thank
say
you.
this. God bless you. Keep on doing what you're doing.
Thank you so
We've
much.
been watching you way back. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Cheers.
God bless. Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye.